There we go. All right, we're going to call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for February 27th, 2024. Roll call.
Chair Simpson,
Here.
Vice Chair Wydola,
Present.
Commissioner Barnes,
Present.
Commissioner Vance,
Present.
oh, and Commissioner Capco.
Commissioner Capco, you are muted.
I think we're muted.
Oh, we're muted? Uh-oh.
There's a message in chat.
Commissioner Capco,
Hey, gotcha.
All right,
Okay.
we're good. Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda, which consists of one set of regular meeting minutes and 3 sets of work session minutes. Commissioner Barnes, you submitted some non-substantive edits to the staff. Does anybody, do we have anybody else make any corrections or additions? All right, then do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda. I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Capco?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Motion carries. Council liaison announcements. Counselor Stankey, you came in when I had my head turned. Welcome this evening.
Good evening, Chair Simpson and planning commissioners. I have a couple things tonight. The city has hired a new deputy city attorney, Michelle Teed. Our current city attorney will be deploying in June for a year, and so she has been hired to help while he is away. Next week at the city council meeting, the city council will be voting on whether to submit our ask to Metro for the Sherwood West expansion, and then staff will submit that the following month. April 5th is the deadline for that. There is a groundbreaking for the pedestrian bridge next Tuesday, March 5th at 2 p.m. at the YMCA. Everybody's invited to that. Last week we discussed the Cannery PUD, the vacant lots near the Cannery Square on the east, west, and the south side of that. Council's direction was to look into a boutique hotel for that lot to the east of Cannery Square to use that space. We're still exploring what other possibilities are there, but that seems to be the direction right now. And then we also discussed annexation policy and agreements if we go ahead with Sherwood West to make sure that we have those in place for when we annex land into the city. Do you have any questions for me tonight?
Is the Sherwood West, that's a vote of the council. Are you taking any public testimony at the?
It will be a public hearing, and so there will be public comment available at that time.
Okay, and so that's next Tuesday. The meeting starts at 7 o'clock.
That is correct, yes.
We're going to add a work session as well.
Okay.
There'll be a work session as well.
Right, but the public interaction or the testimony part of that will be at the regular meeting. at
Correct, at 7 o'clock, yes.
Okay, if anybody's interested in that,
Yep.
Sherwood West. And then, all right, well, that's exciting. You guys are busy.
We are busy, yes.
All right.
What's going on right now?
And then, yeah, annexation plan, that's something that's coming before the planning commission, I would, the code on that.
So we'll do a legislative amendment to the development code, and so that would come to you. And I think I'm not actually sure what the code says about the actual, once we actually implement that policy, whether an annexation agreement comes to you or not. Typically, annexations don't come to Planning Commission, they go straight to City Council. But the policy update will come through you, and then you will recommend to City Council.
So we'll have that in work session soon then.
Yeah, we can do a work session with you if you'd like. We've already done a work session with City Council, but if you guys would like a work session, I think we can definitely add it prior to a public hearing.
Commission interested in getting a brief update on the annexation plan before we go to hearing on it?
Sure, we'll bring it to you. Yep, no problem.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Councilor Stanton.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the update. Staff announcements?
Yes, good evening. Let's see. Tomorrow, we are going to be holding open houses for the climate-friendly, equitable communities in regards to the former governor's reduction in regards to climate pollution. So we are making some amendments to our community development code in addition to other sections of the municipal code. So the open house is going to be in this room, in the community room at City Hall. The businesses, we're going to target between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, and then the general public, the community of Sherwood, anytime between 6 or 8, or anyone that wants to come at any of those times are more than welcome. So open houses for that. You've already received an update in regards to the Sherwood West refinement in regards to being in front of City Council on March 5th with a work session before then. I do also want to announce that we are, unfortunately, now having one vacancy to fill in the Planning Commission. Commissioner Montalvo has resigned since she took a position out of state. So the recruitment for that position will be forthcoming.
Yeah, Commissioner Montalvo took a position in South Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina.
I think it's South.
South Carolina program manager position seems like fits well with her career. So I just want to thank her for her at least a year service. Great input always from Commissioner Montalvo. So thank you for her service, and things are moving quickly for her. So the last meeting was her last meeting. We're not going to see her again here at the commission.
Okay, thank you.
That is all I have.
All right, excellent. And if anybody knows anybody that is interested in serving on the Planning Commission, how would they do that?
Please reach out to me, changjay@sherwoodoregon.gov. But we will be starting to do that recruitment and sending out, our typical processes as
And
far as
there's
recruiting.
usually citizen volunteer applications on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's staff announcements. Are there any community comments? Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And anybody wishing to testify tonight, either under community comments or under one of the public hearings, we ask that you complete one of the blue cards in the back of the room and turn it into one of the members of staff. So, no one's racing up for community comments, so we are going to move on to public hearings. And the first one, I have a script to read. And is it Panatone?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pronounce it right at least once tonight then. All right, the public hearing on Panatone Rock Creek Industrial Land Use Case File LU 2023-017 SPCUP is called to order. I am now going to turn to staff for the hearing introduction.
The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. 1, staff will present the staff report, 15 minutes, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, invite time, and time will be limited as follows. Applicants, 30 minutes, split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application, 4 minutes each. Rebuttal from the applicants, the remainder of the 30 minutes. Then no other testimony will be taken from the public or applicant unless the public testimony period is reopened. final comments by staff, 15 minutes, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and then deliberation by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice that the date you receive, notice of that date you receive. Staff did not receive any notification 24 hours in advance from anyone wanting to provide testimony virtually outside of the applicant's team. If you are in the audience this evening and wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms in blue and submit it to the planning staff. The chair will recognize you who wish to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission may consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulation. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The staff report is available online and at City Hall. The staff report was accessible to the public 7 days prior to the meeting date. The testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to this decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on this issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again, with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I'd like to ask members of the commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Chair Simpson?
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest and plan to participate this evening.
Vice Chair Woodella?
I have no ex parte contacts, bias, and plan to participate tonight.
Commissioner Barnes?
I have no ex parte communication and plan to participate tonight.
Commissioner Vance?
Other than general familiarity just by driving by, no, I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and I do plan to participate.
Commissioner Capco?
Yeah, I have no ex parte or bias, and I plan to participate.
Great, thank you. Does any of the audience wish to challenge any Planning Commission members' ability to participate? Great, now staff can do the staff report.
If we can pull up the presentation real quick, how do we?
We're doing a full presentation, or?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And while we're pulling that up, I just want to point out we have our civil engineer here, Craig Christensen, as well. So if you have engineering questions, Craig is available as well.
All right.
Thank you, commissioners. So as Joy said, this is for LU 2023-017 site plan review, conditional use permit for Rock Creek Industrial, also known as Panettone. Just to briefly give you an application summary, the applicant is AHBL, and the site address is 13700 Southwest Tonkin Road. The proposal includes an application for a Type 4 site plan review and a Type 3 conditional use permit to develop a 413,250 square foot warehousing and industrial structure with secondary office uses. The zoning is employment industrial, and this, as mentioned, is processed as a Type 4 and Type 3. Just a brief overview of the applicable criteria as it relates to the Sherwood Zoning Community Development Code. That was kind of all detailed in the staff report, so I think we can just kind of go over that. To give you some site location, there's the two tax lots kind of combined as one, abutting Southwest Tonkin Road. A little bit of the land use case history. Basically, it was annexed in 2020, and then there's been basically a lot of
work kind of done around the vicinity of the area. So a lot of those decisions that you're seeing kind of related up there, with the land use case history continued, relates more to like road and accessibility, and how the site is going to be accessed in the future. The zoning, proposed land uses, as mentioned, it is part of the employment industrial zone, and based on the application submittal, they're asking for basically 10% industrial uses, which is going to encompass a various amount of uses that are permitted outright within the zone district, as well as 90% warehousing and distribution, which is part of the CUP process because it's greater than 150,000 square feet. Provided obviously that everything is within an enclosed building. Just to kind of reiterate for the industrial uses, these will come back to staff. Basically, when they're going through the permitting process, we'll basically catch it, review it during the building permit phase, just to ensure that whatever they're proposing in that specific space is permitted outright. Looking at the existing conditions, you can kind of see Southwest Tonkin Road and how it connects to Southwest Oregon Street, and then Murdoch. And so you can kind of see the site is currently undeveloped, but it has previously had some grading on there to kind of prepare it. And then you can kind of see the elevations and the contours slightly based on the 3D imaging provided. So just kind of going through the criteria. Site plan review is required for this because basically it's a new development. Basically, it's going to require an issuance of a building permit. Doesn't fall within obviously a minor major modification, as nothing has been built there, nor is obviously any alteration applicable. And then specifically because it's an industrial use building, site plan review is required. When you're looking at the approval criteria, basically these are the approval criteria for a site plan review. Basically, they have to meet the applicable zoning district standards and design standards outlined within the Sherwood Development Code. They have to be able to be serviced adequately by utilities and other services conforming to the development code. Covenant agreements and other specific documents are adequate in the city's determination, basically to assure an acceptable method of ownership, management, and maintenance. The proposed development preserves the significant natural features to the maximum extent feasible. And then, as we will discuss further in transportation, was a TIA required for traffic impact because it was projected, obviously, that it was going to create more than 400 trips, 705 to be specific. Another component of the site plan review process is our industrial design review standards. And this is just to kind of give you a refresher real quick, basically, of the different criteria that we use to address industrial design standards. Specifically mentioning that they must achieve 3 out of the 5 design criteria, 50% window glazing, all roof-mounted equipment shall be required. Pretty general stuff. Conversely, the structure is approximately 194 feet from Southwest Tonkin Road, which is the designated RTO road here in question, and kind of where the applicability would normally come in for this development. However, the proposed development is exempt from the industrial design criteria just based on the topography and the low visibility from Southwest Tonkin Road. Where the site sits, mixed with basically retaining walls, visual corridor standards, the visibility of the site will be extremely limited, if not completely absent, from Southwest Tonkin Road. And the applicant also submitted basically a southeast bound. This is just one of the examples. They kind of took it from multiple pinpoints. They submitted materials indicating that the visibility of the site in comparison to Southwest Tonkin Road will be essentially non-existent at majority of all interpasses of the road. But looking at the design, here's an example of the elevations and architectural renderings for the proposed development. On the right, you can kind of see where they're coming off of Southwest Commerce Court, pending future road construction. And then on the image on the left is basically just side view of what the proposed development should look like architecturally, and quickly just touching base on site plan review and access. You can see the two-way circulation throughout the site. It's going to follow kind of a circular method. Basically, the site is built to the extent maximally feasible. There's not going to be any one-way circular traffic circulation, and then in terms of public roadways, you can kind of see how it connects to Southwest Commerce Court right there on the top left. This is the other portion of the site that's being proposed for development. Public roadways off Southwest Tonkin Road will not be accessible to the site. No public access isn't going to be obtained from that. Everyone that's going to be accessing the development will have to come through Southwest Commerce Court, and then they'll have to kind of reach through that roundabout there to access one of the three driveways that are proposed. So looking at off-street parking and loading, their minimum is 179 with no maximum, and the proposed parking stalls is 253 stalls to service the site, as well as truck parking for freight. Kind of just jumping into the conditional use criteria, this is just kind of like the list of the criteria that is applicable for the CUP. They have to make sure that all public facilities and services to the proposed use, including but not limited to sanitary sewers, water, transportation facilities, and serviced storm drains, electrical distribution, parks and open space, public safety are adequate, and that the construction of the improvements needed to provide adequate service and facilities is guaranteed by binding agreement between the applicant and the city, as well as the proposed uses conform to the other standards of the applicable zone district and are compatible with the budding land uses in regards to noise generation and public safety. The granting of the proposal will provide for a facility or use that meets the overall needs of the community and achievement of the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan the adopted City of Sherwood Transportation System Plan as detailed in the code. Those findings are also kind of written within the staff report as well. Additionally, the surrounding property will not be adversely affected by the use or the adverse effects of the use on the surrounding uses. The neighborhood, this basically won't be affecting any nearby uses of the city, and that any effects can be significantly mitigated by the conditions proposed. The impacts of the proposed use of the site can be accommodated in considering size, shape, and location. The use of the proposed use does not pose as likely a significant adverse impact to sensitive wildlife. And also in permitting a conditional use or modification of existing conditional use, additional conditions may be applied. So if the commission does feel that additional conditions are required in order to meet any of these criteria or strengthen any of these criteria, they may do so through this process as well as part of the CUP. Just to briefly touch on like infrastructure and transportation, it's kind of a big bundle there, but the transportation and impact, the applicant did provide a traffic impact analysis indicating that the proposed development would generate 705 net new daily trips, exceeding our threshold of 400 as to require TIA. The presented traffic impact analysis indicated construction Southwest Commerce Court will service the subject parcels and connect onto Southwest Oregon, eventually transferring into a right-in, right-out, and then Ice Age Drive, pending future road construction of that road. No access to Southwest Tonkin Road is being proposed for the subject development, nor will it be granted by Washington County. Looking at trail segments and alignments, a regional trail, specifically the Ice Age Tonkin Trail alignment, has been designated in the area and was initially running through the middle of the site. Through conversations with Washington County, Metro, and city staff, basically it was determined that the best realignment would be against Southwest Tonkin Road, considering the improvements to that area and kind of keep maintaining the developability of the subject sites. And then that kind of just jumps into our future road widening. Since the construction of Southwest Tonkin Road street widening will be completed but it will be completed by future jurisdictions. So basically a 33-foot wide slope and wall easement will be necessary at the back of the dedicated right-of-way line along the frontage of the subject property to provide for future road construction work. The slope and wall easement shall be dedicated specifically to Washington County, as the city won't be doing any of the future road widening. But prior to the widening of Southwest Tonkin Road, it will be required that the developer record an agreement absolving the city, county, and other agents, therefore, of liability for any damages that might occur within the subject properties due to the before-mentioned construction work. At this time, there has been no changes that affect the findings or the fact of the record. I believe commissioners have some grammatical stuff that we can kind of get into afterwards, but I think this should be fine for right now. In terms of public notices, public testimony, agency comments, agencies were requested for comments on January 24th. Public notice in both just mailed Tiger Times site posting and general citywide posting occurred on or before February 7th, 2024. And at the time of this hearing, no public comments have been received. And no new testimony or public comments. Based on all this information, staff finds that the application LU 2023-017 Rock Creek Industrial Site Plan Review and CUP will meet the requirements of the city code as described in the findings and conditions of approval in the staff report dated February 27th, 2024. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the application subject to the findings and conditions of the approval described in the staff report. What?
Do you want to bring up continuous conditions?
Yeah. So, here are the alternatives. Basically, that staff planning commission can seek as an alternative. I will mention that the applicant has kind of wanted a continuance in this case, specifically to go over a couple questions that they had about conditions of approval related to engineering. So they're requesting, and staff are requesting, a 2-week continuance on this item.
Okay. So let me gather my wits about me. So normally we would call for the applicant to present their testimony. And I don't know if they're prepared to speak this evening.
Yes, they are.
Okay, and then I just want to get my thoughts together. We can ask questions of staff before the applicant comes up. This is our first evidentiary hearing, and we have an obligation to accept the 2-week continuance request from the applicant, if I remember all my rules correctly. And did the applicant, when they come up, I'll ask them, the tolling of the 120 days, is that factored into the information that we've been given as far as the continuance?
Yes, staff requested that the applicant provide a 120-day extension as well, in turn, to give us adequate time.
Okay, and in 2 weeks. So if we're continuing it, we're not going to be getting a lot of new information in theory unless the commission raises concerns that the applicant or staff need to address of magnitude. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So does anybody on the commission have questions of staff before we call the applicant up for their testimony?
I do.
Okay.
Let me start.
Sure. And just realizing that the applicant's going to provide testimony, so if it's related to that, we can.
It may be. I think the questions are in general.
Okay.
Or in line with staff's understanding of the project.
Okay.
Try to be quick about it, and then it may just be borne out in the applicant's presentation here.
Start with the packet page.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the first. All right, so the first one is on packet page 24, under bullet 5, the findings there. I assume that the 705 net daily trips is including all distribution of trucks, and those 705 are semi-truck, what type of vehicles, and that's all in the traffic report. I just want to make sure that the 705 is total for all distribution per day. It has to be. I mean, that's a very large number.
Yes, yeah. So that would include all net new traffics. We do have Craig, our engineer, here as well, who can kind of speak more to the TIA and the technical notes on it.
Is the consultant's engineer also here?
I believe also, do we have the consultant's engineer here as well?
Traffic engineer.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that both the applicant and
That they can,
All right, if that can be addressed during the applicant's.
because the applicant provided the TIA, so they can speak to the calculation on the 705.
Okay, and then under, I got that one covered. Page 2. Wrote the wrong page number down, excuse me. I'll just go to the next one. Under, and this is on packet page 29, under findings under 1682.020, the second to last sentence, the approval criteria below only addresses the warehousing use and the development at large. What about the distribution network and the actual, I mean, the whole point of this is a warehouse, distribution, and office space, correct?
So, sorry. Go ahead, Steph.
yeah. Yeah, that would just be kind of related to the wording. So it's part of the overall use category, which is warehousing and distribution. But I think we could rephrase that as well to include
Okay, just to be clear.
distribution as well. Yeah.
Project description is project, includes everything. Just making sure, okay. And I think staff noted on condition on packet page 36, condition A.11. I had a note that destruction or removal of existing vegetative areas, and I'm striking out will be required to, and I'm suggesting shall be mitigated via, so replanting of similar ground cover.
Destruction or removal of existing vegetative areas will be.
It says will be required to replant.
Uh-huh.
I'm just changing the language, or I'm requesting that will be required to is stricken and be replaced with shall be mitigated via the replanting of similar ground cover. It's just rewording,
I understand.
just to make it a little bit more, so that the areas themselves will not be required to be replanted. It's the applicant shall be mitigating for those areas that they're, okay.
Okay, got it. Let me write it down for a second.
Packet page 74. Under the findings, the last sentence, actually, no access to Southwest Tonkin Road is being proposed for the subject development, nor will it be granted by, I'm just adding it, by Washington County. My question to staff is, are we dictating what the county can and cannot do in our condition?
No, they've told us they won't. Yeah, sorry.
Right. Yeah. So that was kind of found in coordination with Washington County as well, and so Washington County had time to kind of review all the conditions and propose any revisions that they felt were necessary prior to releasing the staff report.
Thank you. Okay. And is the development, which I assume under, for example, packet page 78, condition E2, where the last sentence is saying that to the construction of street widening utility improvements within Southwest Tonkin Road, meeting the approval of the Washington County and Sherwood engineering departments. So is this condition something that the city enforce, or how do we ensure, is it Washington County has buy-off and that's through an email? Is there some type of written agreement? How do we, and who's tracking that condition of approval? Is that through the MMRP process of some other document? And that's that's a global. There are many conditions that are Washington County and Sherwood.
Right, so many of the streets that are surrounding Sherwood are owned by Washington County. And so we have a strong partnership with the county in regards to communication on timing. In this particular condition is prior to approval of the engineering public improvement plans. So our engineering department, specifically Craig, would be following up in regards to the timing and making sure that these requirements are being satisfied.
So it's just a checkbox.
Yes, but he does an extensive review in regards to the public improvements in coordination with Washington County. In this particular case, I believe No Name Road is currently a county roadway in the sense that it's a paper street and is in the process of getting vacationed. So Washington County is already a partner in this process.
And I believe that our engineering department does that type of partnership also with like Clean Water Services and other agencies. So
I just want to make sure that the applicant's not being held to, they are going to be held up by Washington or by Sherwood.
Oh, I
But
see.
They can't move forward without both blessings. And so there might be a project delay or something to that effect if one or the other entity cannot approve.
Okay, yeah, it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
No other questions for staff, and I'll wait until after the presentation.
Okay. And then I just want to piggyback on that because, hold on, my big book here. The distribution and warehousing greater than 150,000 square feet is the conditional part of this. They could not do distribution or warehousing. It's because they have designated that building as distribution and or warehousing
Yeah, so one of the primary uses identified for this particular site was warehousing and distribution, and because of the sheer size of the project, that's kind of what kicked it into a CUP process.
Right, but if they had chosen the buildings,
So if it,
it's 400,000 square feet. I'm using round numbers for math purposes, not reality.
so if in the EI zone, this use would be allowed, and the only reason why this conditional use permit is triggered is because the building itself is greater than 150,000 square feet.
Right, I'm reading that right here. It says less than 150,000 square
Right.
feet, it's permitted outright. My
Right.
question was going to be if they designated 149,995 as distribution and the other 250,000 plus one or whatever it is to manufacturing, processing, and assembly, it would have been an outright permit. But because they're leaving the building as more of a flex space, they're going to the hard call, which is going to get a conditional use permit for distribution and warehousing. But if they do assembling, packaging, treatment, fabrication, or manufacturing within that building, it's outright permitted. And they would not need to come back before us to do anything except tenant improvement, building permit, right? They don't come before us, but they'd come to the city for a building permit for tenant improvements.
Yeah,
Correct.
yes, that's correct.
Right, so if this building had been manufacturing, compounding, we wouldn't have seen the conditional use permit. We would have only seen a site plan because the building is in excess of the threshold for a site plan for type 4, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that's what I'm struggling with is this is the EI zone that we have been working with for years to try and get manufacturing and compounding and high wage jobs. And this is a very large footprint building that is not it because it's distribution and warehousing. I'm just weighing it in my mind that it's flex space. They can do a lot in it, but maybe initially it might be distribution and warehousing.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Gina. We appreciate you picking up on the council goals related to, economic development. what we have seen, you've done a few of these. We've done TS Corporate Park, we've done the Sherwood Commerce Center, and this is the sort of third large project in the Tonkin employment area. Interestingly, the previous two took the same approach, although they had a little bit different building format. So, and don't want to speak for the applicants, but the applicants generally going to want to get as much flexibility as they can. And so if there's a chance that there's going to be a warehousing and distribution user, staff would even recommend that they actually get the CUP up front so they don't have to come back after site plan approval. What we've seen with the other two developments is we did see one of those large buildings occupied by Lamb Research. It was about a 300,000 square foot roughly building, warehousing, but still within our targeted industry. And so that sort of walks the line between, yes, it was warehousing, but it's a win for Sherwood still. So there's some nuance to that. The other thing I'd say is, if we continue to get large, only buildings of this size, and the next one that comes in is the same, and the next one that comes in is the same, eventually we might, it's not necessarily a conversation for tonight, but eventually we might get to a point where staff is saying, hey, in the EI zone, we have, a lot of warehousing, and it's not really the intent. And then so we might really start taking a close look at the conditional use permits within the zone if we start to get away from, the targeted industries that we're going for. And that's where the conditional use permit comes in, and compliance with our comprehensive plan would be required, and that's where your findings would come in.
And that's where I was having a struggle with compliance to our comprehensive plan, the intent of the EI zone, and a carte blanche conditional use permit. I mean, in my mind, it's like, can you limit the size to say half the building is distribution and warehousing, or a percentage of it, or it sunsets in 7 to 10 years, so that we. Anyway, that is. That is up to Planning Commission. I think that's within your discretion. Staff can weigh in on that if you'd like, and elaborate on that more. At the end of the day, you have to adopt findings that address the criteria, and so that's the key. Right, and whether it meets that's the criteria that I was looking at was the. I moved my pages because I was tracking you, but I had made a note about the employment industrial restrictions and what our goal with the EI zone was. So anyway, I was just throwing it out as my thought process. Okay.
I have a question to staff.
Questions of staff?
So, and I can't remember, but for Ice Age Road, or Court, whatever it is that's coming down the pike, what's our timing? Do we have an idea on timing? Does land need to come into the urban growth before that can be developed? Because with the big traffic impact here, it's all going to be routing out to 12th and Sherwood Road and then right back down to 124th. Do we have any ideas on Ice Age Road coming in? Currently scheduled to start construction at the end of this year, 2024. We're in 2024, right? And then opening in 2026, and that is contingent on everything going as planned. We have to acquire right-of-way, fund the property, etc. So there's a lot that needs to fall into place for that to happen, but that's the current schedule. Thank you.
And I was encouraged to see the traffic impact analysis. I don't think it's the same traffic engineers we used before, but they made the same recommendation that we were looking at on the previous applications, that the light is not warranted on Oregon Street based on what's going on right now. So I felt pretty good that we've got a third traffic consultant coming in, looking at our numbers and kind of supporting where we're going with this, and that the Ice Age Drive will then warrant the right in, right out. And we're going on a path that visioned out to where we want to be with that Ice Age Drive. So Commissioner Capco, do you have any questions for staff before we call on the applicant?
No, I do not.
All right, excellent. So I'll have the applicant come up, and if you have a presentation, does staff have that for you? Or all right. So I have Mike Snyder and Brenda Fodge. All right, and if you could just press the button about 2 or 3 seconds until it turns green. And really hard.
There we go. Is that working?
Yeah, and I noticed that we did not use the microphones well at our last meeting, and so just make sure it's pretty close to you so that the secretary can hear us, right? All right. If you just start with your name and address for the record once staff gets your presentation ready. Yep.
Okay.
Michael Snyder. Address is 1201 3rd Avenue, 22nd floor, Seattle, Washington. I'm the architect on the project.
Brenda Fodge, Panatone Development. Address is 1821 Dock Street, Suite 101, Tacoma, Washington.
Like I said, we don't have a formal presentation. It's basically our plans that we submitted for the CUP and site development permit. We can certainly walk through the plans for you, or we can go straight to questions if you'd like.
I would like to do a brief introduction, and we also do have online, in the Zoom call, we have Bjorn Bernstead and Bart Bernstead as our, Bart is our engineer of record, and Bjorn is my co-manager of the project. Panatone is based in the Seattle-Tacoma market. We've been developing in the Pacific Northwest for 15 years. We currently have over 2 million square feet of industrial developments, either planned or under construction in the Vancouver-Portland market. We've done some work in Hillsborough, Beaverton, and Wilsonville, and we've kind of been dancing around Sherwood, trying to find our way in, because we really feel that Sherwood is the core of the I-5 South industrial market. So it's kind of been the unicorn we've been pursuing, and we were very fortunate to be able to make a deal and be engaged on this property. So we're very excited to be here for the opportunity to kind of get where we've been trying to get to. And we feel like our project aligns well with the city's goals and objectives. And I do want to speak briefly to the size and your questions about that. And we really did pursue the CPU to make sure we had the maximum flexibility because we feel like a lot of the current projects, especially the Snitcher one just up the hill from us, they're subdividing that up into smaller parcels and smaller sizes. And we really feel like doing a bigger box is going to be more opportunity for companies like Lamb Research and others to come into the market where that availability doesn't really exist right now. So that's kind of where we went that direction. We don't have a tenant identified, but we have equity and we have interested parties who believe in this market and this project and in the city and feel like it's a good investment. So we're proceeding speculatively, which is not something a lot of people are doing right now. So that just lets you know our confidence and our excitement to be in this market. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Any questions on that before I present?
No, I'll just ask my question because we have the option for conditional use for support services to go along with it. And I just thought it was interesting that you chose not to do any of the accessory support services that would have been allowed with the building. Just seemed like one CUP to cover it all, but. Didn't want to pursue an extra.
No.
Make it more complicated.
Right.
Right.
Well, we feel with the uses allowed in the EI, we will find a tenant for this building. And again, like staff mentioned, with the size of the building and getting the distribution warehouse, it opens up that avenue. We're hoping for manufacturing to bring in more jobs to the community. But we wanted to keep our options open.
Okay. All right.
So I'll present the set that we submitted. So as staff presented, this is our design of the building. Since Tonkin is the arterial frontage road, and we're so far from it, almost 200 feet, and over 75 feet above it, we had our design focused onto commerce, which would be the way to access the building and the site. So that's where a lot of our entry design and frontage focus was put. The site plan as presented, we do have trailer parking on the northwest triangular parcel with our water treatment area along Commerce, and then our building with all of the loading and trailers parked to the south, which is away from Commerce Court, which myself, I'm considering the frontage or arterial, although it's not really, but since that's where the access is, again, we wanted to keep our design focus from that viewpoint off of Commerce. If you have any questions while I'm going through this, please feel free to interrupt me. This is our.
I have one,
Yeah.
since you asked, if we
Sure.
said we can interrupt. So your design focuses from that Commerce Court right there, but this is pretty elevated, like you say, a pretty tall building. It's going to be, I think it's going to be visible more broadly, probably from Murdoch and Oregon Street and all that as well. Did you consider that too, or is it going to be blocked by trees mostly? Or
Yes, and
yeah,
I'll
go
jump
ahead.
to the site sections that staff had presented. These are hard to see at this scale, but we did do a number of studies along Tonquin of how much you would see of the building. And let me go back to our side elevation, which is difficult to see on here as well, but there's a dashed line that goes through the upper windows of our building. Anything above that dashed line is what we feel is going to be visible based on those site studies, and that's without taking into consideration any of the existing vegetation that's going to remain along that slope or any new vegetation that will be planted along that slope.
But that's from Tonquin Road.
From Tonquin Road.
Right, but the orientation of the building to Tonquin is then a large green space area, and that visual corridor goes all the way down to Oregon Street. So people driving down Oregon Street are going to be looking up the hill, I think is what Commissioner Bance
Be able
is
to see
saying.
it pretty clearly.
Yes.
Which is awkward, I understand,
Yeah.
because it's
It
not
is.
in our code to
And-
say, can you address something 400 feet away,
Yeah,
but
and
it is.
I don't disagree with that, although I have been in the neighborhood that's to the west. I don't feel it's going to be visible from the neighborhood. There's so many trees between the neighborhood and this building. From Oregon Street, possibly, yes. But we want our building to be seen. So I'm not worried about that. It's the fact that we did not meet the design guideline criteria for the glass, percentage of glass required that's facing arterial, because you won't be able to see that glass because it's down low on the building.
So a quick question just to add on that. Looking through the packet, I know we've got the visual ideas. There are no visual simulations that were done in front of us
We did not
No.
prepare any.
Okay.
I saw the colored elevations. You did make an effort to
Yeah.
reduce the scale and massing by doing vertical
That's
articulation and.
Yes.
Yes, so, and I can speak to the entry. So yeah, we have 2-story glass with some vertical fenestrations, canopies at all the entries. And let me go to the site plan here. We are making this into a multi-tenant building, the capabilities. We may have one user, we could have up to 4 users in this building. So we do have the enhanced entries at 4 locations on the building. I'm going to flip over to the civil plans, which to see if you have any questions on anything for engineering that we can answer. Again, the storm pond is located on the northwest parcel. That'll be landscaped. I didn't include the landscape plans in our presentation, but they are in your packet.
Yeah, I guess I looked at the landscaping, if I could ask questions, and was concerned that there was only 5% of evergreen trees, and we have seasons here, and so they're going to lose all their leaves, and we're going to have large swath of truck parking that's going to be visible, and I was wondering about looking at the screening through that area and on the west side of the property to have a little bit more of the evergreen trees that would eventually provide a greenscape year-round through that.
Sure, I don't think we would object to that. Staff, do you have any comments on the landscaping that we've proposed versus what commission is recommending?
Yeah, so one of the criteria was kind of requires 5% of landscaping to be dedicated as evergreen. I think that it was notated that the preliminary landscaping is indicated only 3.8%, so we conditioned it to be 5%. It sounds like the commission would like to maybe kind of potentially require additional evergreen landscaping, potentially tied to the CUP, maybe.
I would say that because, well, I don't know, what is truck parking is a use? How is that a use in our code?
Trailer parking. Oh, it's a use.
I don't see it defined, so we have one lot, or two lots that we're doing one application for, and distribution and warehousing is the one lot, and then the other lot is truck parking, so I don't know that use. If that is part of the CUP, and if it's part of the CUP, I think I see it for two things. One is for screening for the people driving by, but it's also light mitigation. That creek corridor needs to be protected from light pollution, and I see you have a photometric example that's provided, but still going to be light into the creek where the animals are going to be going through. And so if we had evergreen trees, that would help mitigate that.
At this time, what we have proposed, and it may not be represented accurately in this packet, is our lighting would be wall packs on the building. At this point, we don't have any like parking lot lighting planned on that back truck court or do we have any street lighting or lighting on the truck court in the upper northwest corner? There's going to be street lighting on Commerce Street, which we would think would be adequate to cover that truck court area at the same time. So this time we're not proposing any additional lighting besides what's required for the building itself.
Okay, because I misunderstood this red blob as being a lot of light there.
No, it would just be, we are looking at the street, the public street, thinking it's going to have lighting, so why would we need to go beyond that knowing? And also, where the truck's sitting up high and against, that's also why we put the trucks against the street, is to keep them away from the critical areas. And keep it uphill, so to speak.
Okay.
To clarify, you said truck, but you mean trailers.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So
trailer.
We're just parking trailers there, and so when the truck comes in, connects.
Thank you.
And so that's when we're going to have the visual screening. And typically, I'd say distribution between the hours of 4 to 5 in the morning, they're hooking up, and they're going to be trailering out of there right at the...
Yeah, it just depends on the tenant and the use, which we don't know at this time.
And so given, and I think to Commissioner Simmons' point here, is that area, while not delineated by the ESA report as a significant area, does provide and will provide additional habitat and whatnot. So I think given the proximity to Rock Creek, the addition of evergreens at greater than 5% is something that the commission would be backing.
Would it be fair to say that or another way to clarify would be to put make sure that the 5% is in that specific area? Could we frame it that way, that it's not getting buried in a different corner or away from the sensitive areas?
That would be up to your landscape engineer, depending on the density and holding and carrying capacity of that area. It would be nice. It would also be nice to have a staggered or kind of seral approach to, you're adding a pond feature, and I'll talk about that in my next comment, but it seems like you have an opportunity here not to just throw vegetation at it, but to actually engineer it appropriately.
So I know the code says 5%. I will ask we're accepting a continuance because that's what we need.
Yes.
That's
we are asking to seek a continuance.
And with that continuance, I would ask staff to kind of make some notes to bring back the information to us so that we can move forward. One is I want to know if the trailer parking is part of the CUP, and as such, the mitigation measures that would afford us an opportunity to bolster up the evergreen screening and creek corridor protection, and make sure that we understand what the lighting is in that parking lot based on the applicant's submittal compared to that it's just going to be street lighting on Commerce, because it's a conflict in the how I'm reading this document, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, staff can make note of that and then bring it back to the next hearing.
Yeah. We don't need to solve all the problems right now. Just want to get it out there. I don't want you to be surprised next time with information or questions that we have.
We will do our best to get responses and work with staff on that.
Great.
Okay.
The applicant also want to address the TIA question that Commissioner Barnes
Yes,
raised? Okay.
yes. Commissioner Barnes, you brought up the 705 trip count. I believe that is trucks and autos combined.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's correct. And also, as a point of procedure, we did have to have the TIA reviewed by Washington County prior to it being accepted by the city. So they are also full in on the acceptance of that.
Great, thank you.
It was kind of amazing that 705 trips, but there's only 77 PM peak, which is the key number that we always look at for fail points on the.
I think they're going to be out of there early.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you were doing staggered work hours. You have more questions for the applicant, or do you want to continue your presentation?
No, Commissioner Barnes, you had a comment about the detention pond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start there. Do you have any other?
Just really quick point of order. Since we're getting into questions, we'll probably want to stop the time calling. Yeah. So we don't count the question and answer towards your time. Yeah.
Great. So just to close the loop on that lighting, the trailers themselves are going to be part of a private, it's a contractor, right? The contractor's going to have his own vehicle. He's going to park his truck. He's going to park it there, and or his trailer. Are they going to have their own security lighting, and is there going to be a condition that says no additional security lighting will be awarded or allowed as a condition?
There isn't a condition specific to that.
That's what I just asked staff to bring back to at
just
the
to
next
make sure
meeting.
that okay. All right. So I have three broad topics. One of which is the water runoff. The second one being lighting, and then the third one being engine idle for when they actually are loading up things. So let's talk about the water. And if you can go in your presentation to the which is C1.2, sheet 1.2.
Okay.
Great. And so noting here that there's a large, this is a massive development of impervious surface areas, and there's hard asphalt or asphalt that's in the southern portion here that's presumably, I think in your previous figure, it indicated it as there's a specific language that we have to call it heavy duty asphalt pavement versus standard duty. And then we have cement concrete. So throughout the property, we're looking at a massive blocking of impervious surface. And when we take that in consideration of the lot immediate to the north there, that will be developed eventually. Now, this is a question for engineering as well. I have to assume that stock pond was adequately sized, right? And my question is there an opportunity, instead of undergrounding the culvert from the circle all the way down to the stormwater retention pond, to daylight that section, to meander it? I know that's a very steep slope, and I'm trying to figure out means and ways, but is it possible to have a daylight situation where we can have some better water quality or a rain garden or something to that effect in that area? Food for thought. It's not, obviously, if it can't be engineered, it can't be engineered, but the more capacity, the more, greenery, the more environmentally friendly kind of construction we can do, I'm all for that.
We can ask Bart, our civil engineer, on the line to address that, but my initial thought is that is all steep slope there.
Yeah.
So it would mean, to achieve something like that, probably installing a retaining wall to hold back that slope in order to achieve a flatter area that could support an open water storm drain. That would be my
Can I
initial response.
chime in?
Yes.
All right, just
Okay.
say your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, this is Bart Brinstead with AHBL. I'm a civil engineer. Address is 2215 North 30th Street, Suite 200, Tacoma, Washington. So the stormwater facilities, the pond is sized for hydromodification, as well as a LIDA, low impact development approach. We did consider swales around the site. There's significant concerns from our geotechnical engineer about the steep slopes existing and on the western portion of the site. So it wouldn't be appropriate or prudent to be adding any more surface water to facilities there, and it'd be best to tightline it to a safe location, so we're not sending water down these slopes causing potential erosion issues. So I think you nailed it when you asked the question and posed it that way, that the slopes are a big concern there and why we've done things this way.
Okay, thank you for that.
What is preventing erosion here? These are pretty steep. There's a lot of weight with all the asphalt and buildings and everything. You mentioned maybe putting in retaining walls, I guess, but what is holding everything?
Well,
off
yeah,
Duncan
as
here?
far as supporting the grades, we have some steep slopes. We have a retaining wall, which is kind of in the portion adjacent to the building, between the building and Conquin Road.
I think this is a retaining wall there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, the steepest slopes on the site we've chosen not to touch. So you can see areas where we're not grading. We're going to maintain those existing slopes so that we don't have to work on them if we don't need to, just to avoid those issues. And other locations where we have space to grade out slopes at 2-to-1 or less, we will do that. But any slopes that are steeper than that, we've essentially chosen to stay away from them. And then, that's establishing the grades, and as far as reducing erosion on those slopes, everything will either be planted and mulched with new landscaping, or where feasible, existing landscaping on the existing steep slopes will be retained.
Next question.
Yeah, so looking at that grade on that western edge there, I mean, that looks like a 1-to-1, if not less than that. It's a very steep slope, but then when you compare that to landscape sheet 1, the coverage on the trees, I don't see planting on these slopes as easily or feasible as outlined in the landscape plan. It seems like there's a disconnect between the ability to plant on these slopes and what will be retained. And to our commissioner's point here, what is tying the road at the top of this grade? Are we having like pillars or something like that? What is the tie-in for the street or the roadway down to the trailer parking that is going to ensure that that hillside won't slide?
So you're asking about the access to the trailer parking area adjacent to the pond and how those grades are established?
Correct.
Yeah, so there's no retaining walls in that area. Those grades are established just by grading in slopes of 2-to-1 or less. So in order to provide a stable slope there, we don't need any retaining walls or
And that might be
anything
outside
special
our scope,
beyond
since
just.
we have civil engineers and our traffic engineer. And this is, the road itself was done by your traffic engineer and approved by Washington County and our engineers, correct? That is possible.
You're referring to Commerce Court, Craig Christensen, Civil Engineer, City of Sherwood. You're referring to Commerce Court. Commerce Court was designed and Craig Christensen, Civil Engineer, City of Sherwood. So Commerce Court, yeah, was designed and reviewed by city staff, engineering department. So that part was, that's already in process. If you're referring to some of these other, like driveways and so forth, those are on site. So we would not look at that, not the engineering department. That on site goes to the building department. So they would look at any walls. And I'm not sure if they would actually look into slopes or not when it comes to that, but usually you would have a geotech on board to make sure that they design that and it's stable.
Okay, and so we have a geotech report in
Yeah.
our packet too.
And it's going to be an engineered retaining wall for that road that comes down. It's an engineered retaining wall with a geotech making recommendations.
And the driveway into the trailer parking area.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. I don't see an engineered retaining wall as part of this site plan for that area.
That would be correct. It is not designed yet, the retaining wall.
Okay. Okay. Okay, and then my last condition here, I know we had talked, the wall height, as indicated in the plan set here, is 34 feet for the retaining wall. And that's, excuse me, that's along the access to the back of the building. And that is based on the site plan or the elevation here, is not going to be visible from the street. The question is, and I assume that again, this may be out of scope, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a size limit to the height of a retaining wall? Because I mean, 34-foot retaining wall seems quite large. I assume that it's been, checked out. I don't know, but maybe a stepped or
it'll be a building permit application just for that wall that will be reviewed by the city. And it'll be engineered by a geotech. We've done much larger walls.
Okay, great.
In our previous projects.
Then the last one I have is the photometrics look great. If we can condition downcast lighting as a requirement and making sure that in the distribution area behind, in the loading docks specifically, where it's going to be coming out, and this may be something that you have to discuss or as part of your continuances, what is the photometrics for the back of the building look to be quite hot. Is there a potential screening behind the area that's not shown on L1? Where's L1? So L1 has one row of trees, and it appears to be of I'm looking for the legend for this type of tree. And this is to Commissioner Simmons' point, if it can be an evergreen tree along the back.
Along the south property
Along
line.
the south property line, just to ensure, again, during winter when, they're still going to be doing distribution and the lighting's going to be there, that we can have some additional shading. Thank you.
All right. You heard our concerns. Any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Capco, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I think I just had one about if we're looking into, you mentioned Lamb Research as being able to be one of the people that would accommodate, fill this building. Is there a water treatment plan available to a tenant in that capacity?
Can you say that again, please?
So I'm thinking of if we have Lamb Research come in, they deal with a lot of chemicals and things like that when they're dealing with their manufacturing of their components and things like that. I'm thinking largely, if you look at like Intel, they have their own water treatment facility because of the amount of chemicals that they deal with on a regular basis. I'm wondering if there's a plan to put into place something that would help mitigate some of the chemical overspill or anything like that, if a company like that was to come in.
I think that would be best captured in part of the tenant improvement plan that they would submit to talk about the use in the building and how they're going to build it out. Since we don't know who the tenant is, we don't want to speculate or build something that wouldn't be appropriate. So I'm sure I don't know how it was handled with them because I know the building came and then they came in. So
Yeah, Commissioner Capco, you got me stumped for the first time in a while. Craig Christensen, do you have any if it's indoor? So I know what I do know is if it's outdoor and there is chemicals, we have a few of those actually outdoor, and they are required to get a special type of erosion control and treatment permit. I don't know what it's called.
1200Z is for outdoor
1200Z.
facilities. Yeah, it's with DEQ. So, but indoors, I imagine they'd have to probably go to DEQ, potentially a CWS. If whatever they're discharging goes into the sanitary sewer system, CWS is the ones who end up treating that. So,
yeah, and I think Brenda's comment is probably, I would agree with that, our building permits do get routed to utilities, right, Craig? We route the building permits. You're not in building, you're in engineering. We Commissioner Capco, we have a good system where building permits are getting routed, and so our public works department is going to be reviewing the permit submittal. And so I'd say if we had a concern, we would likely catch it at that time.
The same would be like for a restaurant. They would have to have certain mitigation measures for the grease traps that would go through there. So depending on the tenant improvement that's happening, the building permit process triggers different partners in our agencies to facilitate their.
Yeah, I think in short, we're looking at a building code / public work. I'd say mainly through the building code and potentially public works as well. But certainly, they need to meet through their submittal any type of building code requirements. If, for example, an interesting example, but the water treatment plant that we have going in the Tonkin employment area, a lot of really special requirements related to the building code, and so they're going through that whole process right now. So I think it's a really good question, and we would catch it during the building permit approval phase. And I think it's encourage the applicant to look into that as well. If they're just in terms of leasing and everything else, because if there does turn out to be a major improvement that's needed in order to issue the permits, then that's kind of at their risk if they want to continue to move forward or not. So I think we all kind of share in the responsibility and risk, if you will.
And I believe the municipal code addresses odor and noise. So any future tenant improvements would have to adhere to that as well.
Yes. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Capco?
Yeah, just thinking of enticing people, I think having a plan for that in place to begin with is a good thing to think about.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant before we call for other testimony?
I have one quick question, just to follow up. In the code, there's the energy conservation requirement, and so just wanted to see, is it under the tenement or the tenant improvement or the plan that you're speaking to? Is that where they would provide, hey, we're going to do solar, for example, or we're going to offset in the design of this building or in other buildings that you have designed, LEED certification? Has that ever come up, and anything to that effect?
It's always an option. We don't do it as a standard always, but we do have a couple buildings. We're doing one in Gresham that's going to be a LEED building. We don't have a solar system or solar plan for this building specifically.
But it's going to be wired for solar already with conduits?
Whatever is required in code, we're going to meet the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the Oregon State Energy Code, and the roof will be designed to take on that weight for future solar.
Great. And then I'm just thinking, is there, and this may not be opening your books, but is there a rationale why LEED certification wasn't thought of for this building?
We just didn't do it for this particular building.
Great, thanks.
However, a lot of the materials that, especially in the tenant improvement, will be green, just like in this building. So although we won't be pursuing a LEED certification, a lot of the materials used will be green material and could be applied towards a LEED certification if desired.
Excellent. All right. Any other questions of the applicant? I do appreciate the effort that you put forth on the exterior of the building. The architectural features that you put on the north facing are very appealing to someone. And I'm hoping that it catches enough of the eye off Oregon Street. So
are we. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, you want your building to, especially if you're building on spec, that you want someone to like it from the street too. So, okay. We still have 13 minutes back for rebuttal. I'm just going, if you have any other testimony to provide, otherwise I'm going to call for proponents or opponents of the application, and then you have time for your rebuttal.
Okay, nothing from us, I don't think,
Nope.
Brenda.
Okay. Then, at this time, do we have anybody else signed up to persons in favor of the application that would like to testify, not already part of the application? Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to testify in opposition of the application? And then we would also accept testimony as a neutral party, if you would like to. I just want to make sure you're aware that we have the continuance is on the evidentiary continuance does not require us to keep the oral testimony. We can accept written testimony only, or do we need to continue do we need to take public testimony at the next hearing, or can we close it after 7 days or whatever?
You're testing me here. You know, I believe you can close the record. We didn't get any public testimony. It seems like most of the concern and comments are coming from Planning Commission. I would recommend we just leave it open just in case anyone wants to submit testimony.
Okay.
I think worst case, if someone comes forward in at the next hearing, potentially looking at leaving the record open so that you can rebut things is what we'd be looking at.
Okay.
But it seems like that's likely not going to happen. I'd recommend we just leave things open, and we'll likely be able to close and wrap up the hearing during the next meeting.
Okay, so I just wanted, because the next part of my script talks about not taking any more testimony, and if I'm going to go down that path, I always like to look a little bit smarter by asking the question on public record, so they know I didn't know the answer anyway.
At what point do we want to make the motion for the continuance, so before you?
I'm not going to close it. We're going to keep the record open, and we're just going to do a straight continuance to the next meeting.
That'll be 3/12. Joy, is that correct?
That's correct.
So what I heard from the commission is concern regarding the landscaping plan, ensuring a screening area, concern regarding the lighting and the photometric plan to ensure that we are not going into the Cedar Creek or Rock Creek corridor. And did we hit all the other ones? And then the
Trailer parking as a CUP.
is the trailer parking part of the what use is it defined as? Is it a permitted or conditional? What is trailer parking?
We did have other conditions that we specifically wanted to address with staff that we just needed to clean up some details on where it wasn't exactly clear what the condition meant, and so we just wanted to get that resolved now. So in addition to those items, we did have a couple specific ones we wanted to
Okay, great. 'Cause-
tidy up with staff, just so that no one can go back and then make sure it's a clear expectation.
Okay, perfect. And so you want to ask the questions now?
Oh, no, I just didn't know if we needed to know what those other conditions are, or we can just handle those with staff and give an update next hearing.
I I guess I would recommend if you address them directly with staff, they can bring modified conditions and findings to the meeting to us, and even just have a memo the week before.
So I just want to make sure you knew there was a couple others that we wanted further clarification
And
on.
then if you get the further clarification and staff revises it, then we can address it at the next meeting. And then what I would do, I would ask if you ask accept either the conditions or the modified conditions based on what the staff and you are able to clarify between now and the next continued hearing.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. You probably don't want us to try and wordsmith your conditions right now. True.
That is true. We'll work on them. They're fairly technical, related to infrastructure. And I don't want to jump the gun. Are you getting to final staff comments? I just wanted to clarify one thing.
Because we are not closing the public testimony, we will jump right into final comments by staff.
Thank you. And Hugo, jump in if you have anything. I just wanted to clarify, just really big picture, why the site is sitting up so high. So originally the property owner had actually proposed to lower the site and do a massive export of fill. And the short story is that they were not going to get access to Tonkin Road. And so, his plan, the property owner's plan, is to lower the whole site and actually take access from Tonkin Road. And in our very early conversations with the county, they said, no way. And also, it would have required significant frontage improvements along Tonkin Road, and that was a major expense. And so when we're looking at the overall plan, including our Tonkin Employment Area Plan, the access was always planned to be from internal roads off of Oregon Street. And so, you kind of address one issue, which is road access and frontage improvements, but it leads to another issue, if you will, which is a site that sits high up in the sky, in the air, and is visible from, surrounding areas. So, and that's sort of the game we play with development and planning and all this stuff is, we're always addressing one issue and then something else comes up. But that's the reason why it was in the long-term plan that access would be from Oregon Street, not from Tonkin Road. But based on the topography here, there was really no other option except for to leave the site up in the air. And of course, now we just have to deal with the issues about visibility and retaining walls and things like that. So,
and again, I do appreciate the architect coming forward with a building plan that is got architectural interest to it. I'm concerned about the trailer parking and making sure that that's screened because you're going to coming from Oregon Street, and when you're driving that way. I think we all now are looking up at the other complexes up there and seeing how visible everything is from Oregon Street and wanting those buildings look great and they have architectural interest, and just making sure that we continue that, that industrial feel that looks like Sherwood industrial feel. It looks good. It has architectural interest. It's not just tilt up. So again, appreciate the consideration that you're giving us in looking at that. All right, if we don't have any other comments by staff, we can go ahead and continue, accept a motion for a continuance to a date certain.
All right, I move the Sherwood Planning Commission continue the public hearing on the application, Rock Creek Industrial, Site Plan Review and Conditional Use Permit, LU 2023-17, until March 12th, 2024.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we continue the hearing on 2023-013 Rock Panatone Rock Creek Industrial Land Use Application to March 12th. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 And that's Commissioner Kopko. That was a unanimous aye. No opposition. We will continue to March 12th. Thank you very much for your time. All right, we are going to move on to our next public hearing. Give me just a second to move my paperwork around here. All right. The public hearing on Mosier Pass final development and final subdivision plat land use case file LU 2022-020 is called to order. I will turn to the staff for hearing introduction.
The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report for 15 minutes. Questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We'll then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. Applicants, 30 minutes. Persons in favor of the application, 4 minutes. Persons in opposed to the application, 4 minutes. Rebuttal from the applicants, a remainder of the 30 minutes. Then no other testimony will be taken from the public or applicant unless the public testimony period is reopened. Final comments by staff for 15 minutes. Questions of staff, if any, by the commission, and deliberation by the commission. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of the date you receive. Staff did not receive any notification 24 hours in advance for anyone wanting to provide testimony virtually. If you are in the audience this evening and wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms, and we've already received 2, and submit it to planning staff. The chair will recognize people who wish to speak. When you come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. In reaching a decision on the application, the commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report. The staff report is available online and at City Hall. The staff report was accessible to the public 7 days prior to this meeting date, and the testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to the decision. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again, with enough detail to allow the commission to respond to the issue, precludes the action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I'd like to ask members of the commission to disclose any ex parte contacts, bias, or conflicts of interest. Please indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Chair Simpson?
I have, other than the public records of my participation from the beginning of the Southeast Sherwood master plan to now, I have had no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest as it relates to this specific one, like I said, except what's on record already. And I intend to participate this evening.
Great. Vice Chair Bidola?
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest and plan to participate.
Commissioner Barnes?
I have no ex parte, bias, or conflict of interest, and I plan to participate.
Commissioner Bance?
Other than general knowledge through driving by, seeing it, no ex parte contact, bias, conflict of interest, and I plan to participate.
And Commissioner Kupko?
I have no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and I plan to participate.
Great. Thank you. Does any other member of the audience wish to challenge any planning commissioner's ability to participate? Excellent. So that leads me to the staff report. So let me get to the presentation. All right. Well. All right. Good evening, Chair Simpson and Commissioners. The proposal in front of you of the Planning Commission tonight is the Moser Pass Subdivision PUD Final Development Plan and Final Subdivision Plat Review. The proposal, again, is for the PUD Final Development Plan and subdivision, final subdivision. And as you know, a plan unit development has a two-step process. And the first step is the preliminary development plan, which you, as far as the commission, makes a recommendation to City Council, and City Council rendered the decision. And majority of the Plan Commission was part of that first step, recommending approval with conditions to City Council. And on March 7th, 2023, last year, Council adopted Ordinance 2023-001, approving the 30-lot plan unit development with conditions. Once a preliminary development plan approval is received, then a second step can happen. The applicant would submit a detailed final development plan and final subdivision plat for review and approval by the Planning Commission. This is the stage we are on now. So as a reminder, the site is located in southeast Sherwood, northeast corner of Southwest Murdoch Road and southwest Upper Roy. The image in the right is the zoning map of the area, and the site is zoned very low density residential plan unit development. The required approval criteria are identified in this slide. 1640.030 states that upon approval of the PUD, overlay zoning district and preliminary development plan by City Council, the applicant shall prepare a detailed final development plan as part of the chapter for review and approval for Planning Commission. The final development shall comply with all conditions of approval of Section 1640-020. Furthermore, since the PUD involves a subdivision of land, the final plat must also prepared and submitted for final approval pursuant to 16.120. The specific conditions applicable during the final development plan phase are those listed under prior to approval of a PUD final development plan and subdivision plat. So preliminary plans conditions of approval items B1 through B14 as listed on this slide are, and the next slide, since there's 14 of them, are what's required and what the staff report consists of as far as addressing all of them. So let me just highlight some of the key elements in regards to this phase. So 30 lots plan unit development subdivision. The original proposal, if you remember, was 32 lots, but the commission requested that the original the proposed park be enlarged, and I'll have a slide. The next slide will show the changes. So Tract E is now that community park that the commission requested. The applicant is still proposing single-family detached residential housing units for the sites. So here's a side-by-side view of the development plan. So the top image is the approved preliminary plan, and the bottom image is the final proposed development plan. And the major difference is a bigger park that is now Tract E. So if you see that, which is great because that was a key element of your recommendation. So here is a rendering of what the proposed park consists of. So the very specific conditions that were tied to the park are conditions of approval number 13 and 14. So I'm just kind of going through them since we have the renderings here. The park shall include trees and landscaping. They definitely provided a landscape plan that provided that. The park shall include lighting. A lighting plan was also part of the packet. It shall include a minimum flat area of 20,000 square feet that is ADA accessible to the public street, and the required amenities can be located in the flat area as they're reflected there. They should include a sports court, a facility based on our identified need of a community desired based on the 2021 Parks Master Plan. We did work directly with Kirsten, our assistant city manager, in regards to it, and she oversaw the Parks Master Plan, and the proposed basketball court is consistent with that. The park shall include a gazebo or other covered structure with tables and seating, minimum of 600 square feet. They are proposing that. The park shall include minimum of 2 benches outside of the covered structure, and you can see those along the paved walkways. Park shall include a new restroom to match the existing restroom at the Cannery Square or similar design approved by the Planning Commission. I do want to let you know that our existing or current city manager pro temp, we've worked closely with him and got the rendering in regards to the restroom that is in the cannery, and it's also reflected there on the maps. So there is an understanding that the city is responsible for purchasing, installing, and the long-term maintenance of the restroom, and the city is responsible for setting the hours and operation, cleaning, and maintenance schedule of the restroom. Yeah, and the developer is responsible for the installation of underground electrical and plumbing and construction of a concrete pad in the final location of the restroom. So there is a partnership with Public Works and the developer in making sure that the public restroom will be installed and ultimately maintained. One of the other requirements is the parallel parking. On-street parking shall be provided along the south side of Upper Roy Street adjacent to the park, as reflected by the cars in the streets there. It did say that park area can be reduced on a per square foot basis for any off-street parking and drive aisles, provided that they meet dimensional requirements of the code. And the applicant's not proposing any off-street parking. And the last condition related to the park, it just basically says that the final plat approval submit draft CCNRs that demonstrate how Tract F or the park itself will be owned and maintained by the future HOA. So, and the applicant did provide CCNRs that reflects those. So the engineering department did review the plat, and the comments that we did receive were that the storm sewer location adjacent to Murdoch Road is in the process of still being determined. That's track B. If the street trees are not allowed in the landscape strip due to the storm sewer location, the required street trees may be also placed outside of the storm sewer location. The storm water facility, track B, sorry. The storm sewer location adjacent to Murdoch Road, which is adjacent to the roadway, I misspoke. Right, is in the process of being determined. So, but again, if street trees are not allowed within that landscape strip due to the storm sewer location, we're gonna place them outside of that. Sorry.
I'm just laughing, we're not gonna make them defy, like, the physics of time, place.
Right, right. And then finally, the size of the stormwater facility, which is track B, may be smaller in size. But again, if the track B is reduced in size, the abutting lots will increase their square footages that meets the minimum lot size requirement of the zone. So engineering plans may also need to change, resulting in a change in easements that impacts the final plat, and change of easements would not change lot configurations nor lot sizes. Potential changes to the plat based on review of public improvement plans will not alter the project in any way that jeopardizes any of the criteria used for the original approval. So notification, were sent out, and public notices also were sent out, and publication in the newspapers were completed, along with site posting and general citywide posting. I do want to point out that we did receive comments, and Exhibit D you guys have already received. And then I do have a new exhibit, Exhibit E as an elephant. So let me pass this on. From Mr. Lineweber, I believe. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that. He did send an email on February 22nd basically his testimony is similar to the previous Exhibit D, Jesse Dahlia, in regards to the crossing as far as improvements to the crossing on Upper Roy. And the best part about it is that their request has already been addressed as a condition of approval as part of the preliminary approval. So it will get built as far as the safety of that particular intersection.
Was Exhibit E emailed to Commissioner Kopko?
Oh, I don't believe so, but my apologies. Just because it was sent later. So, but we will definitely, it'll be part of the record.
And your summary of it is?
It's very similar to the staff report in regards to the concerns in regards to the pedestrian crossing at Upper Roy.
The testimony provided in Exhibit E is very similar in nature to Exhibit D.
Correct.
So Commissioner Kopko can be rest assured that it's the same answer to that, is that it's already addressed in the plan.
That is correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
So based on that review of the applicant's submittal, the zoning and community development code, agency comments, and findings of fact in the staff report, staff is recommending approval of Moser Pass subdivision PUD final development plan and final subdivision plat, subject to the ongoing conditions of approval. I can answer any questions you may have of staff at this time.
I have just one question. I'm looking at the, in any one of these plans, the path that is going, that we talked about initially, that's going between 5 and 6, across the cul-de-sac, down and around, that's still going to be produced
Yes.
and built, and then it connects to the south, to the next development.
Yes, if you look at the image to the right, you can see an access easement from the end of the cul-de-sac.
I see that track C is the access easement. But I wasn't, these don't represent, these are like utility lines and stuff like that. I just didn't see the path itself.
There is an easement, and I don't have it in my slide, that is in between the two lots. I believe.
It's supposed to be between lots 5 and 6.
Yeah, is it not on the top right? So on the top right image, and then between right where it says C sheet 2, just above that is lot 5, and then above that is lot 6, and there's 2 dashed lines.
Right, so there's the easement there, there's the easement across the cul-de-sac that creates track C, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that.
Oh, within track C?
Within track C,
yes,
and then around the corner,
yes.
That, because I believe that the modification to the plan and the creation of track E in the park there was done at council.
Yeah, and so they are required to install the trail within track C.
So the trail and the signage is still occurring with the connection to the property to the south.
No signage, voluntary signage. So the compromise was instead of beefing up, if you will, track C and that open space, it was put the investments into the park and then scale back the improvements within open space track C and have it be more of a natural area with the trail.
So track C trail is more of, it's not going to be built to.
It'll be asphalt. It's required to be asphalt, but the benches and actually check the condition, but I don't think the benches and the signage are in there. It was just, it's a trail, asphalt with the reforestation around, and then there was a specific condition for safety to add basically a handrail or a guardrail adjacent to a steep slope.
And that's what I was reading was a guardrail. So
yeah, and so the big investment, if you will, is going to be the park.
Yeah, and I get that. I just wanted, I saw guardrail, and then when I look at some of these other plans, I see no trail, and I'm like, okay, is there a trail or is there not a trail, and what's the?
There is required to be an asphalt trail still.
And there'll be a guardrail for protection, fall protection from the steep slope. Okay, so that's
Yes.
my question on that. And does anybody else have any questions of staff before we call the applicant up?
Yeah, just can you clarify the park? So who's going to own the park land? Will it be private property then, just in conjunction with the city? Is that how this is? Like city maintenance?
It is a public park.
Okay.
It is, but there's an agreement in regards to the bathroom, the restroom.
So it's a park that's going to be owned by the HOA, actually. But as part of the planned unit development, there's always the opportunity for the city to get some type of public benefit. And so that's where we say, because typically if it's just a subdivision, you could argue, and it does happen, that the HOA owns the park or the pocket park, and there's actually nothing in the CCNRs or in the decision that says it's open to the public. And so it's basically just for those residents, a private pocket park, if you will. So in this case, it's owned and maintained by the HOA, but the general public has access to it per our conditions of approval. The only exception to that, and this is where some of the compromise came in between the city and the developer, the city agreed to actually pay for and install the restroom, and then also maintain the restroom on a permanent basis. And so our public works crews, as they maintain the Cannery Square, they'll supply toilet paper and clean the restroom as well. So that's the only improvement within the park that the city is responsible for, is the bathroom.
And presumably owns, I suppose, the improvement itself, or who knows?
Sure, we probably own the restroom. Yeah, I mean, we can, we'll get in 20 years, we'll talk to the HOA and figure out what to do,
Sure. Okay, so in terms of public access, is that effectuated by an easement or something like that, recorded either? How is that, or is it a contract the city is signing?
It's really through the CCNRs and through the conditions of approval.
Okay.
And so if worse came to worse and the HOA said, no way, public's out of here, we have the land use decision that clearly says this is open to the public. And so the HOA collectively, to get out of that, would have to come and file an amendment to the plan with you guys or with staff, and actually remove that condition from the approval.
Okay.
So it's going to be open to the public.
And public access will be the same as access to any other public park in the city in terms of hours and just all the normal, what you'd consider ordinances and such like that.
I don't know, to be honest, the exact details of that. CCNRs have hours in there? So probably a detail we haven't worked out yet, but I'd say generally speaking, it's going to be seen as I want to be careful not, I don't want to say city park, but it's a public open space that's privately owned and maintained.
People interpret it that way, so if there's different allowances than there are for normal city parks, somehow that needs to be known.
Yeah, and
Signage.
Yes.
If the hours deviate from a standard city park.
Or any other typical park ordinances,
park,
for
it needs to
public
be
access. Yeah.
Signed hours.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's something that we can likely address. The CCNRs probably have not been recorded yet, and so we can probably address that. We can work with the developer and just clarify. That's a really good thing to clarify. What are the actual hours? And then my thought would be that for example, we tie it to public park hours, what are we now, sunset to dawn to dusk. And so if you get people, teenagers, whoever, you get people, hanging out there after hours, it's basically a trespass call. And so our police could still enforce it, even though it's not a public park, technically.
Okay.
Yeah, and the CCNRs typically record with the plat, so they haven't been finalized.
So the lighting would follow the hours of follow hours of operation.
Well, I was just thinking, every park you go to, there's that signage that has all the ORS or Oregon or our city statutes that apply to the park, and one of them's hours. And I just think, do all those same things apply to this? Because it's basically behaves like a public park, but Just curious.
I think that the short and direct answer is no, actually. It's HOA owned and maintained, but I think,
right.
you know, that this,
The common use, I guess.
yes, it's available to the public. I would say, you know, the HOA, though, of course, has an interest in actually managing the park in coordination with the city. So I think it's one of those where it's not everything is really clearly defined, but certainly if there was an issue if there was an ongoing issue, I think the city would work with the HOA or the developer to actually address those. But certainly ours, I think, is probably the biggest one.
Right.
That could be addressed in the CCNRs and then enforced by a trespass as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I would follow the lighting, because you've got a basketball court. If I were in that area, I'd want the lights off on the court at a reasonable time, so
Right.
our basketball going off at midnight. But that
Yeah.
gives them self-direction. The CCNRs will self-direct that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd say is the impacts, if you will, to the adjacent owners are part of the HOA as well. So they all have an interest in addressing their own issue, I guess, and the ability to. So
That's great.
And then just so I understand some of these conditions regarding the street, so it looks like left turn lanes on Murdoch is what's,
That's outside of the scope.
that's a condition right here.
Right, but we're only, so those are already been approved by the city council.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm just
Oh.
curious I'm just making sure I
Oh, okay.
understand what it's.
Oh, okay.
So there's gonna be 2 left turn lanes, though, like on Murdoch, is that how that, I'm just trying to visualize it.
there's going to be, can you read the condition, actually? You mind just reading it to me?
Yes. Prior to approval of engineering public improvement plans, the developer shall design 4 left turn lanes within Southwest Murdoch, at the Southwest Murdoch, Southwest Upper Roy Street intersection, meeting the approval of Sherwood Engineering Department.
Yeah, so that would be left turns from Murdoch to Curry Ridge into the subdivision, and then the left turn going in the opposite direction be north onto Upper Roy Street. So the road will be improved to include a center turn lane, left turn lane.
And there's, looks like pedestrian crossing or something.
And we'll do what we call a rapid flashing beacon.
Yes.
It seemed relevant because of testimony on that.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to
Yeah.
suggest changes to the conditions, because we are,
Right.
yeah,
No,
sorry.
no, there was testimony on this
Oh, okay.
issue, so.
Okay. Perfect.
Can staff remind me on the condition for, I think it's 5% for evergreens, is that on this requirement on this project as well?
It's actually a really nuance here, but it's a parking lot landscaping requirement. And so that's why it came in with the industrial. It would come in on basically any application that requires off-street parking. It wouldn't apply to the one stall per lot. There's no landscaping with individual lots. So it's a commercial industrial standard.
Okay, thanks. All right, any other questions, staff, before we call the applicant up? Do you have a blue card?
Okay, nope.
Thank you. If you could just state your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
So I'm Jennifer Arnold. I'm with Emirio Design. We are located at 1500 Valley River Drive in Eugene, Oregon. And I have the applicant or property owner here with me too.
Yeah, Kenzie Roth, JT Roth Construction, 12600 Southwest 72nd Avenue in Portland.
So we have spent the majority of the last year or so going through the conditions of approval in order and trying to satisfy those. So we do agree with staff that we've satisfied the conditions of approval for the purposes of this evening. We still have other things to work out. We also, I don't believe there are hours of operation for the park in the CCNRs, but we don't plan to deviate from city park hours standards, and we don't have lighting proposed around the basketball court for that reason alone.
That'll help.
Yeah, that definitely will help.
And on sheet 3 of 5 of the submitted plat, a little zoomed in version. You can see the utility and public pedestrian access easement.
Which, I'm sorry, what page are you on?
3 of 5 of the plat packet.
You know what exhibit that is?
It's Exhibit 4.
And,
She's just
and it's
pointing
the
out
paper
that-
version of what's on the screen
And
too.
she's just pointing out that
Oh.
access, that will give you connectivity to Murdoch from the coal.
So that used to be a tract, and due to setbacks and some lot constraints, we decided to put that in an easement. And the trail will still be constructed there. It'll still be public access as per the easement on the plat. But that reordered the tract lettering throughout the project.
There you
So
go, sorry.
we removed a tract, and that's why we've got tract E as the park instead of F. Also on the plat, we don't typically put improvements on here, which is why you don't see the etching for the actual trail.
No,
But that's still a part of the project, and so is the reforestation, as well as all of the other improvements that we had previously discussed. We moved some of the tract C improvements, like the benches and the gazebos that we previously showed on the wedge piece going up into tract C, and we moved those to the park so they're easily accessible. And the trail is also ADA. That was another decision that came out of the city council hearings. So the project looks a little different than the last time you saw it, but hopefully we addressed a lot of the concerns that you had in our last hearing, one being a larger park space with more amenities. We initially submitted for our final approval, and we had a couple options for a sport court proposed based on the 2 different levels of community interest in the park plan. And when it ran through the Parks Board, that was not the kind of sport courts that they were looking for, so we updated it to that half-court basketball court. We're planning on a low-impact lighting throughout the park for pedestrian safety security measures, but we're, like I said, not planning to light the basketball court so we don't get late-hour basketball players. But we still have a lot of other amenities and open space areas for people to enjoy. It is open to the public, but it is owned and maintained by the HOA, so if anything happens, we're willing to work with the city, just as we have up until this point for the bathroom, for example. So for the most part, we're here to answer questions and hoping for an approval as we feel we've checked the boxes and we agree with staff.
So you're accepting the staff report as written?
Yes.
Thank you. And just for clarification, because of the lot widths on 5 and 6, to meet the minimums, the tract was removed and they're just put in as easements, correct?
Yes, but the trail is still there.
The trail's still there,
Yes.
so that resolves the problem.
Yes. And the easement is specified that it's for the utility that will be underground as well as public access.
Perfect. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? I appreciate the thought and all the work that you went into putting the community park together. It looks
We
like
tried.
it's going to be a great asset to the neighborhood for sure.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in that oak woodland that's going to go back in there.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate the maintenance plan too, and the arborist reviewing it. I'd like to see a little bit more in the natives, but everything in here I know is going to be consistent with other parks in the area. So
Well, before we stripped the site, they did go in there and they pulled some young saplings, so we're going to replant trees that were actually on the site.
nice. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments before we call for the?
I can't help myself. One comment.
Okay, Eric, you go for it.
I just want to. It wasn't really highlighted in the I guess in this presentation, but the trail is going in track C is going to connect to the trail that was on the Street of Dreams development, if you will, and so it'll be one continuous trail
basically from that development all the way through, to Murdoch Road, basically. And so that was kind of the vision, was to get a, I don't know, it's probably not a mile, it might be a mile, I'm not sure, but it'll be a decent sized trail. You could really, I guess, get some exercise, get a nice walk in, at least through the neighborhood. And then we also have the park for more, to spend more time in, if you will. And the applicant is going to, as Kenzie mentioned, reforest mainly with natives, that area around the trail as well. So it should turn out really nice, and it should screen the last development that we just looked at. So leave it there.
All right. Commissioner Capco, do you have any questions or comments before we move on?
Nope, thank you.
Yeah, we just for those watching, we do not have any other people in the audience, so we will not need to call for anybody else to testify in favor or opposition of the application. And rebuttal testimony is.
I suppose I do have a comment, though.
Okay.
So I was here for the last time, so you guys come back. It's not the park on top of the hill. I think it was envisioned 20 years ago. But thank you. This is great work, great combination, great work by staff, city council, and everyone. This is good stuff. So I appreciate it.
Excellent.
It's probably good for you guys to close the chapter on the whole Southeast Sherwood master plan, right?
Yeah.
Close that chapter, the last little site here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Also, I appreciate the amount of parking that's around this thing. And gosh, I had in my head, oh man, I think about like 3 car spaces or something. But this is pretty good. Very nice. Yep.
And it's a neighborhood park, so you're going to envision most of the people are just going to be walking there. So it's well done, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, I would entertain.
We need to close anything.
Okay, then we will. There's no one else in the audience, so we're going. Does the staff have anything to add which specifically addresses anything raised during the testimony?
No.
All right, then the public testimony portion of the hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now I can entertain a motion.
Okay. Let me entertain.
And entertain me.
Sorry. It's 9 o'clock. Yeah, we get a little weird after 9. All right, so I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for Moser Pass, case file LU 2020-020, PUD SUB, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve Mosier Pass final development and final subdivision plat land use file LU 2022-020. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Commissioner Capco, thank you. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and congratulations. I think that is a good benefit to the community. All right. Moving back to my agenda, we are done with public hearings and moving to commissioner comments. I was going to ask if we had the charter review. Vice Chair Wyodola, did that committee wrap up its work?
Did it wrap up the work? Great question. So since I am getting my emails from the city, no problems with the new dual mobile authentication. Got my first emails and scheduling for today, actually earlier today. We'll be having that meeting. Well, we've all threw out dates that work for us, so sometime in mid-March, we'll be getting together for our first meeting.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right.
Sorry, is this city charter? Is that what you said?
City charter
Yep.
Review.
review, the charter review. All right. And then next week, definitely, if you're interested in the Sherwood West, the city council meeting will be of interest. Any other?
We have I think our ethics thing coming up we have to do. Just a reminder.
Oh, that's right. Statement of economic interest due to the city or to the state by April 15th. If you haven't received your email from them, I don't,
Doesn't start quite yet.
It doesn't
I think
start
it
quite.
opens next month, but it's coming up.
Yeah, they haven't opened it up yet. And if you've not, yeah, so if you haven't served previously, you should be getting an email. If you don't get an email from this state regarding your annual submittal, reach out to Joy or someone else usually does it for the Sylvia does it for the city. All right.
I had one other thought that hit me tonight. I'm just going to float based on the first application. It wasn't part of the criteria for that, but it got me thinking. Our code is very specific to design standards within a certain amount of feet from a particular arterial. But this one, like you mentioned, so high up. Should we be considering design standards for like visibility, like if you're on top of a hill, or like skyline, standards or something like that?
So I do know like Portland have very specific scenic views that are preserved, where they require certain buildings so that they can stagger each other so that their views aren't completely. I mean, that might be something that we might, if you guys want to think about moving forward with that as far as amendments to the code. But then we would have to identify where those scenic views are.
Right.
I think that would be a good thing when we go through Sherwood West. Right now,
There's a lot of hills out there.
We're built up here, but Sherwood West, when we go through that process, let's make sure that we remember that scenic view.
Well, I think we need to establish scenic corridors, and then from there we have to establish view sheds, and then scenic overlay, and then it goes into visual sims of project developments from scenic corridors.
So the best part of anything, we just went through the concept planning. So the next phase, if we get approved in regards to the UGB ask, is the comprehensive plan for Sherwood West, and that's when we're actually talking about like all the middle housing zoning, the details in regards to the zones, but also putting zoning down, but discussing scenic if that's something that we want to address during that. And it's a several-year process. So, yeah.
It just struck me as interesting that this doesn't matter for the road right next to it, but everybody else around.
Yeah.
See, which wasn't appropriate for the particular public hearing tonight because it's not code, but thinking about the future, for buildings on a mountain, what do they look like?
Absolutely. And I think, staff is willing to follow the policy direction of the policymakers, which in part is, informed by your guys's, everything that you do here, because city council is not going to get this application that we just heard, right? It's you guys. And so they might not, I mean, of course you have your liaison here, but they're not going to know all these details. And so that's where, you've asked many times, what's the role between the planning commission? It's exactly this as well. So we just did goal setting for city council, and that's where that, that would come from. So there's a little bit of a process to get what you're talking about, to staff. Basically, it's got to go and get on city council's radar through some, and we need to work out exactly how planning commission is informing city council, but that's how it happened. Is it gets on city council's radar, then during the goal setting that we do annually, city council says we need to update our code to address this. And so
that's why I thought I'd float it. I mean, I know we're not decision makers of the council is, but if you guys thought that was of interest, and it might be something to bring back to them.
And I think definitely putting it on the radar for Sherwood West, because that's a blank slate right now for code and implementation of the plan. It's at the detail level plan.
Yeah, things we learn along the way.
Jumping on those coattails and very related to be tree code or tree, like similar to what Lake Oswego does, because there's going to be a lot of force in Sherwood West. So people want to have a say, and so that's something that.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify for Sherwood West, what I just mentioned. I throw that out the window. We're going to be working with you as Planning Commission closely on what Sherwood West looks like and what the tree code looks like. And so we'll get into that. You guys do have a role, more formal role in forming all of that. So what I just mentioned was Tonkin employment area, current code, current zoning. If we need to change anything, it's got to come. But
you guys were taking things through you, and that goes to City Council for Sherwood West. So you guys will have the opportunity for Sherwood West to weigh in and tell all that stuff.
Yeah. So who's the project lead on Sherwood West?
That's me now.
Okay. Because I would put it as some bullet points of the don't forget we discussed this, because
Sure.
when we get into the looking at 1,900 acres and we're going to start looking at big pictures, and we may forget some of these other things, like, okay, we want to talk about trees, we want to talk about evergreen percentages, we want to talk about view corridors, we
Yeah.
want to talk about these things now, but when we get into the next thing, we're going to be talking about middle housing and design standards and what the state's doing to us and what we are able to do, and so we may get lost in the weeds there and forget about some of the other stuff. So project
Yeah. We'll definitely get it in the minutes in terms of commissioner comments. Something tells me you won't forget though, Gene. So please do bring it up again. But we'll make a note as well.
Yeah, that's why I've got really smart commissioners too, because they've got great ideas that are coming forward. So
I also heard that you and Joy presented at Washington County Sherwood West this morning.
We did, yeah.
And
This
that went well?
afternoon. It went well. It's well received. They like the variety of housing, the middle housing there. Some concern comments about transportation, of course, and just the overall impact to the county transportation system. But overall, the plan has been very well received everywhere we've gone. Metro, policy boards, Washington County, et cetera. And Joy and I will continue to make the rounds. We're doing a youth cohort presentation in the next month or two. Committee on Racial Equity at Metro, we're sort of making the rounds. And so, yeah, but I do agree with Chair Simpson, and you guys are free to provide testimony if you'd like as planning commissioners through this resolution that's going to council on the next council meeting on March 5th. So if you guys have testimony, happy to take it in writing or verbally, but that'll be really where they authorize us to submit the full application to Metro.
all right. I have nothing else. If there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Commissioner Capco, nothing?
No, I'm good. Thank you for letting me join.
All right.
Zoom.
This is perfect. Thank you. All right. We are adjourned. And Eric, I found the in the